Welcome to Try Not to Overthink It, where we explore the intricate landscape of mental health, well being, and everyday life. I'm RJ.
Lil.
Join us as we dive into insightful conversations, share expert perspectives, and personal stories that shed light on the various dimensions of mental wellness. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or a deeper understanding of the human mind, this podcast is your safe space to engage, learn, and navigate the journey to a happier, healthier self. If you're new to the channel, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification button so you do not miss out on any future content.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Marcellus Brooms, licensed professional counselor, licensed mental health provider. He's going to join us for the conversation today. How you doing, Marcellus?
How you doing? Thank you for having me here again. I appreciate
Awesome.
it.
So today he is going to be joining us to unpack the topic of healing. As mental health providers, this is something that we espouse to our clients all the time. Our goal is to be a passenger on your journey to watch you and help you, as well as, cheer you on into you being the best version of yourself. And a lot of times that starts with sitting down with us and processing things and unpacking things and healing from past hurts, past traumas, past disappointments. So it was actually Marcellus's idea for us to talk about this topic. And so we decided to have him on and for us to, as men, to sit down and talk about this. And as mental health providers, give you our insight on this particular topic. So what do you guys think about this particular topic?
I guess I could start off real quick. I heard an interesting quote from a woman. She was attacked by someone, nearly lost her life, and this happened like 40 years ago, I would say. And she made a statement that was very profound to me. And she said that what happened to me in the past, it still hurts me today, but I had to accept it as something that happened to me, and it's going to be a part of me. But at the same time, I can't let it define me. I can't let it take over my life. So she was able to develop like a healthy balance over the years. I'm assuming that she went to therapy, maybe some spiritual counseling as well, and was able to overcome it. But for a while, she went through those years where she struggled with accepting that it even happened, because I guess it was shocking, to be just walking somewhere and someone just tries to take your life out of nowhere. I'm sure she didn't wake up that morning expecting that to happen. So I'm sure she was in denial stage for several months, several years, and finally had to, like, you know what, it happened. I have to accept it, but I have to also move on with my life and get the help that I need to overcome it. And it was refreshing to hear that from someone from that generation, because most of the time you hear a lot of people say, I don't go to therapy. I just dealt with it, or you have to just deal with it. And you mentioned before, RJ, about people having a lot of maladaptive coping skills to deal with these type of situations, which is unhealthy. But they don't see it, because they survived. Like, I survived. So what do I need therapy for? What I felt like I healed, I overcame it. But at the same time, they're bringing it up every minute, or acting out on someone, or lashing out on
Right.
someone, and not even realizing what they're doing.
Or they use it as part of a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, before we started recording, as Khalil calls it, the show before the show.
The show before the
You
show.
you have to acknowledge the hurt. Healing starts with honesty.
Mm.
And I tell my clients this all the time, that you can't fix what you refuse to feel or you refuse to name. Naming things makes it real. And when you sit down and you're able to say that this bothered me, I'm still dealing with this, I'm trying to overcome this, I'm trying to unlearn this, I'm trying to process this, that is when the real healing can start. As long as we're kind of talking around it, we're trying to pretend that it doesn't exist, you're never going to get any further than where you already are. For a lot of us, like you alluded to, you know, a lot of us have these maladaptive, unhealthy behaviors that we've learned to utilize as coping skills, not realizing that we're not coping with anything. We're just putting a band-aid on a
Right.
gunshot wound. And it's not really fixing anything. It's not really helping anything. And when you learn something wrong, you'll teach it wrong. And so for a lot of us, we learn from watching other people. So we learn the maladaptive or the unhealthy things that we do from our mom, our dad, our brother, our cousin, our uncle, our aunts, people that we spend a lot of time with. And that's where we see people like, for me, and I'm always interested in meeting my clients' family members. And the reason I'm interested in meeting my clients' family members and their significant others is because chances are they play a part in who you are right now.
Right.
Because for most of us, we are the company that we keep. And so that's
Right.
where, as I said before, you have to be honest with yourself and recognize that certain things don't serve you anymore.
Hmm.
There too often you will see where people would just matriculate and move through different seasons and different phases of their life doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. That's the definition of insanity. And we don't recognize that it's insane. We don't recognize that it's a perpetuation of brokenness because it's always worked for me. So if it ain't broke, I ain't gonna fix it.
Well, that brings me to mind of Virginia Satir when she talks about the status quo, right? And in order for someone to want to change, right, some sort of threat has to come in because we're comfortable with the status quo, right? Even if we're operating in maladaptive coping skills like you all were talking about, or in different situations where it's starting to look like everything is unhealthy, right? And some of the ways our family handle certain things are unhealthy, right? But it's comfortable for us because we know it. It doesn't matter if the way we handle things are trauma based, right? It doesn't matter if we're just surviving, right? Because being in survival mode, I had to tell a client about that. If you're always in survival mode, that means that you're not thriving. You're not living a healthy life. You're not promoting long-term sustainability, right? Like you're just surviving for the here and now and however you make it to the next day, right? And if you're doing that, especially with your mental health, right, on the line, if you're putting your mental health on the line to continue to live like this, knowing that it's driving you crazy, right, knowing that it's unhealthy, right, then some type of change has to happen. And Virginia Satir says, well, a threat will come in, right? And RJ, I know you work at inpatient. The reason why people end up in inpatient, right, is because some sort of threat came in that said, "Hey, you need to change," right? Whether the police came in, right? Whether your family said, "Hey, we got to we got to lock you up," right? Or or whether you had a mental breakdown and somebody else noticed and they called the police on you.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, right? There was some sort of threat that came in and said, "Hey, if you don't change, this is going to happen to you," right? And it shouldn't take people that long. But the defense mechanism is, and I think most of us have it, right? I know I have it. I'm fine. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with me. Everybody else is like this. Well, if I look at my environment and I'm in an environment where people aren't mentally healthy, right? Then I'm going to think I'm well too, because I've seen people in unhealthy families, unhealthy situations in their environment and neighborhoods and stuff like that. And really, it's very easy to compare out, right? Well, look, shoot, such and such over there, they crazy as hell. I ain't like him. I ain't talking to myself yet, right? So I'm okay, right? I'm not going to see a therapist. I'm not going to get help, right? Because those people going to want to do something to me or lock me up or whatever the case is, right? And that continues to perpetuate that cycle, right? So if I don't get help, my children don't get help, their children don't get help, right? Because that everybody's looking at it. If I go get help, that means that I'm admitting that I can't handle life. I think that's the overall picture. People think by getting help, they're admitting that they can't handle life, which is wrong. That's a horrible way to look at it, right? Human beings, we were developed and created to be in relationship with one another, right? And just because I'm a Christian, I'm going to see it, I'm going to explain it from my standpoint, right? I believe God created us to be in relationship with one another. I don't feel as if we're supposed to hide and not be vulnerable, all right, with one another. I don't believe we're supposed to keep all these things inside of us. I don't believe that's how he created us. And I think when we have that set mind that I can't tell anybody about my problems and I can't really seek the type of help from a therapist or a mental health provider, right? That's when we're going to start to eventually the what is it, RJ, you said it before, if you don't if you don't handle your mental health, it's going to handle you. I forgot how you said it,
The
but
the things that you do not the things that you do not address will eventually find a way of addressing you.
amen.
And I
And that's
mean,
what we see.
I agree with everything you just said. I I think that where we, especially in today's society, where we get it messed up is the fact that instead of being in relationship with one another, we are in competition with one
Petition,
another.
right?
I'm trying to outdo you or I'm trying to be better than you instead of taking the time to focus and worry about yourself. You're comparing yourself to somebody else.
Right.
What's for you is for you and what's for them is for them. What works for them may not work for you and vice versa, and that's okay. I think that, going back to, the initial point, you have to recognize that healing is not a linear straight line. Some
Right.
days you will feel on top of the world, and other days you will feel like straight up hot dog water. But at the end of the day, it's the getting up every day, being invested in being better than you were yesterday, and celebrating the small incremental progress that you're making, regardless if it's small, big, medium. You got to celebrate the progress because that's what's going to keep you focused on continuing to push forward and continuing to address the things so they don't eventually address you. Because as you alluded to, for you to be sitting in front of me, especially in an inpatient setting, for you to be sitting in front of me, things have gone exceedingly bad. All the wheels have come off the car. It's on fire. It's upside down and it's in the water. All of those things have happened at the same time. So there were some things that you could have addressed along the way that you didn't address, that you kept pushing to the back burner. Oh, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Or I'll get to it later. Or I'll deal with it, in a few minutes or an hour, not realizing that for a lot of us, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, and your physical health cannot wait until tomorrow. It can't wait until the day after that. It can't wait 6 hours from now. Because a lot of times what we don't realize is, for especially when you're in it,
Yeah.
when you're in the center of the storm, you don't recognize how bad it is until you get to the other side of it. So you're thinking right now, oh, I'm fine. But then once you get to the other side of it and you're sitting down in front of me and now you're on the right regimen of medications, we start to unpack and process certain things. You
Right.
start to realize, like, man, I was tripping. What was I doing? I've had clients tell me that before, like, man, I was tripping. Like, yeah, talking about that sounded crazy. They want to apologize for some of the things that they were saying or some of the things that they were doing because they're on this side of it versus being on this side of it.
Hey, and RJ, you brought up working at inpatient. One of my first jobs in the mental health field was case manager, so I had to work closely with inpatient with my clients, and a lot of my clients, they were in poverty, so they saw inpatient was like, it was like a sanctuary. Actually, it
Mm-hmm.
was like somewhere where they can escape from everything. And once they got medicated, we would try to find them a helpful discharge plan for them. But they went right back into the community dealing with poverty. Like you said, you always look at the family,
Mm-hmm.
abusive relationship. So it just like everything we did just went
Would
out the
be for
door.
no, would be for nothing
Yeah, for
sometimes.
nothing. Yeah. So it's like I kind of feel for those that are in poverty and they're trying to do better, but they have so many barriers. And
Mm-hmm.
then I remember when I eventually left the case management field and went into counseling, the my former clients would come to me for counseling, but they were homeless, uh, medical issues that they needed to get, Medicaid or uh, unemployed.
Right.
So I was able to find them all those resources. So when they came to counseling, then they were ready for healing. But
Mm-hmm.
before that, they had so many barriers to stop them from healing. So it's like, what do you say to those that have several barriers? Because like I'm in a situation where I can get help. I can just go into look into my list of counselors that's on my insurance
Right.
and get counseling if I need it. But there's people that don't have insurance. The industries, they're being abused, so they can't really heal at the moment. But RJ, you made a
It's the Maslow hierarchy of needs, Marcellus. That's what you're describing right there. Like, hey, if I don't have my basic needs met,
yep,
ain't no way I'm gonna be thinking about my mental health.
yep. And a lot of them came into the council saying like, "Hey, man, I need housing. I need this." So it was kind of like a waste of time for me to like try to like work on counseling at that moment because they were so fixated on I need housing. I don't have any food for tomorrow. I'm sleeping outside and the shelter is filthy. They got bed bugs and we got this, we got that. I can't I can't even concentrate in therapy right now. So I would
Right.
try to find them housing, get them food. If I can find them a job, job training. There was like programs that helped them with school, all those things. But at the same time, it was too much for them as well. So they were kind of stuck, like you said. Kind of like I acknowledge that I have some issues, but I have a ton of other issues I need to take care of first before I can handle this issue. But healing is the most important one. But it's complicated when you have all these
Yeah, I
other
mean,
barriers.
you're absolutely correct. I mean, it does get complicated in that regard, because again, it's no different than if you're driving your car. There's a reason that it's illegal for you to be texting and watching things on your phone, responding to emails, and talking to somebody on the phone while you're driving the
That's
car,
right.
because you need the car operating the vehicle. A car is a kinetic weapon, so you're operating a car. You need your complete and undivided attention to be able to be the best driver that you can be while
Yes.
you're operating this vehicle.
Right.
So when you look at healing as though as the same as operating a car, you need to be able to give your complete and undivided attention to the healing. So as you said, there are so many different things that are coming at you. It is very hard to be fully and 100% invested in the healing process and be able to get everything that you can from something when you're distracted and pulled and pushed and prodded and poked at by so many different things.
Yeah.
But the first step to that is acknowledging that you need the help.
Yes.
Closed mouth does not get fed. And
Right.
so no one can even help you with the other ancillary things if you're not at least coming to somebody and saying, "Hey, please help me.
Right.
Help me. Me right here. I need the help. Help me, please." And that's where for a lot of us we sometimes get caught up in our ego and our pride being in the way.
Yes.
And that's where, like I tell my clients, you have to give yourself permission. You have to
Right.
give yourself permission to rest. You have to give
Mhm.
yourself permission to feel. You have to give yourself permission to release. And you have to give yourself permission to grow.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yep.
By giving yourself permission, you're letting go of the ego. You're letting go of the pride. You're letting go of your personal feelings about asking for help, because it's very hard for us as men to say, "Hey, I ain't got it."
Yeah.
It's hard to look as a grown man, it's hard to look another person in the face and say, "I ain't got my shit together." Like,
Right.
I just don't. I'm toe up from the flow up. It is very hard for us to acknowledge that point, but there's something about saying it out loud that it releases that weight off of you.
Yeah.
And when you release that weight off of you, guess what? You're able to start accomplishing things, because guess it is much easier to run 2 miles when you have no weight on you than to run 2 miles and you got 50 pounds on your back.
Right. Right. Well, look, what you're talking about is actually a part of healing, right? Is to let go of heavy burdens, right? There's no way I can heal if I'm continuing to conceal what's going on with me, right? Even for the person who's homeless, right? Even for the person who's in an environment that's unhealthy, right? Women being abused, men being abused, right? Children being abused in an unhealthy situation. Regardless, as RJ said, you're still going to have to speak up and talk to someone, right? You're going to have to verbalize, right? Or tap into that emotional vocabulary of how you feel with a provider, with somebody outside, a social worker, somebody who can give you the help that you need, right? We
Mm-hmm.
can't help you
Yeah.
if you're holding on to this, right? If you refuse to let it go. I had a pastor say to me a long time ago, and I'll never forget it, because he was like, "Hey, people come to God all the time, and they say, 'Take this from me,' right?" And he uses analogy as a fist. He's like, "Yeah, take it from me," and he's like, "Can you take anything out of a closed fist?" Right? And I'm like, "Nah, nah, because you got to pry it open, right? God doesn't want to have to pry it open, right? It's supposed to be an open hand. Yes, RJ has the open hand, right? That's how you do it. And in order for us to be able to help someone, they have to be able to explain or tell what's going on, right? Even when I dealt with kids, sometimes it's a rough situation because they've been taught, don't go telling nobody your business, don't do this, don't do, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. well, they'll carry these heavy burdens, right? And that's a part of healing, right? If, like RJ said, if I'm walking miles carrying all these heavy burdens, it's going to weigh me down.
Mm-hmm.
My behavior is going to change. My thought process is going to change. I'm going to have a negative mindset because I'm weighed down. A part of healing, right, is to be able to release, give over, even people who are in rough financial situations, right? And when we were just talking about it, I think Marcellus, you talked about it perfectly, right? It's very hard to help someone who's in a lower socioeconomic situation, right? It's very hard, but they have to be willing to say, I don't know what to do. I can't afford this. I don't know how to take care of my family. I'm struggling. They have to be willing to go to a case manager or social worker and say that in order for their family to get the help that their family needs. That's the humbling process, right? And I think once I start to humble myself, that's when, you know, God opens up doors for you to be healed. The humbling process. If I go in there prideful, it's going to be very difficult to get anything. I have to humble myself, and that's a part of healing. And even as a mental health provider, I'll have men come in, and I'll one of the first questions I'll ask them is, "Hey, why are you seeking therapy?" And they'll go on to their long list of stuff, and then I'll ask. I said, "Well, is this your first time seeing a therapist?" A lot of them say, "Yeah," and I said, "When you hear therapy or when you hear mental health, what comes to mind?" Most men are going to say feeling of weakness,
Mm-hmm.
helplessness, right? Soft, right? You know, medication, right? That's the first thing. I'm like, I'm a therapist. I don't even prescribe meds, right? But regardless, there's a negative, you know, uh, um, you know,
Connotation.
connotation with it, right? It's negative, right? And so in their minds, they look at that healing process is admitting defeat.
Or an admission of inadequacy.
Yeah, it, exactly. Then the insecurity steps in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go tell this person I can't take care of my family, or I'm taking care of my family, but I'm mentally overwhelmed because it's so difficult, right? Marcellus, we had talked about this last time, right? Leading a family is a difficult thing, right? And we're not just talking about men. I'm talking about single mothers too. I've seen single mothers on the brink, but leading a family, right, whether you're a male or a female, is exhausting. We were talking to Marcellus about that. You got kids. You have four boys, right?
Four boys.
Four boys, right? There's always something going on. When do you have time for yourself? The self-care is important in healing, right? If you haven't been able to have time for yourself, even a 30-minute to decompress or to catch your breath, right? Your mental health is going to be out of
Yes.
whack. You've talked about that in your book. So these are things that are very prevalent to what we're discussing, because healing for anybody first takes place when you can admit, I'm overwhelmed.
And I was gonna say too, um, a lot of my clients that I worked with in the past and just people that I work with in poverty, like RJ mentioned the maladaptive behaviors, they learn those behaviors. So sometimes in some situations, until like someone comes in, steps in and says, "Hey man, this is not the way you should be living," or their conscience. But usually they're just learn about what they were taught from
Right.
their parents, and sometimes it's better than what their parents did. Like their parents might have been like strung out on drugs or something, for example, and they might do something less than that, thinking it's better than what they're still better off than what their parents did. Okay, my
Right.
parents, they weren't together, but at least I have a girlfriend and we're in a steady relationship. But they're still doing drugs, but it's still better. But if you compare it to the way the parents raised them, it's a little better than what they're doing now, currently doing now. So
Right.
it's kind of hard to tell them in some situations that you need to heal, because in their mind, I improved. My parents was on crack cocaine. I'm only smoking marijuana, or I'm only
Right.
drinking alcohol, but they're still struggling in poverty, or still might be abusive to their girlfriend or spouse or boyfriend, whatever. Um, so that's where it's kind of difficult. But I guess that'll take time. But eventually, either someone will tell them that what they're doing is wrong, or they'll kind of like figure it out themselves, or you know, a relationship with God, whatever, something. But somebody has to intervene. It's like I have fish in my fish tank, a small 55-gallon tank, and they don't know, like, I'm looking on the outside, I can see everything that's going on, but they might not see, like, let's say a goldfish is in there, and I'm feeding to my African cichlids or something. I don't, but I'm just saying if I did, they can't see it, but I'm looking on the outside, I can see everything that's going on. So I'm able to, like, make an analysis of what's going on. But somebody who's actually living it, they can't.
They can't see.
They can't
Right.
see it. So sometimes
Yeah.
you need that outside force or some type of influence from the outside.
Khalil talks about, boundaries. That's, and both for me and Unique, that's our favorite B word,
Hmm.
boundaries.
Hmm.
For a lot of us, the mistake that we tend to make is we tend to have loose boundaries,
Hmm.
and we surround ourselves with the wrong people. A lot of times, as you were just pointing out, a lot of times we don't recognize that the people that we surround ourselves with, the influences that we surround ourselves with, start to impact us in a negative way. I talk about, like when I talk to my clients, I talk about sphere of influence. Everyone has a bubble that surrounds them. It's an invisible bubble. It is literally, the length, like your arm's length. When you stick your arm out in front of you, that's how far your bubble is around you. So when you come in contact with someone else, your bubble starts to overlap theirs. And so the things that they say start to impact you, and the things that you say start to impact them. You start picking up phrases, jokes, sense of humor, slang. Sometimes if you spend enough time, you pick up accents from hanging around other people, and vice versa. For a lot of us, because our boundaries are very loose, we will have any and everybody around us, not realizing that everyone does not deserve to sit at your table. Everyone does not deserve to eat with you. Everyone does not have the privilege, or should not have the privilege, of hearing your story and partaking of your story. For a lot of times, what happens, we have to understand that protecting your peace is part of your recovery.
Right.
Saying no is a form of self care, and it's not selfish to say no. When you recognize that this person, because like you can look and you can see, especially with family members, at some point in time you have to acknowledge, like, they've plateaued out. This is as far as they're
They can
trying
take
to
it.
go.
Yeah.
Not that they can go. This is as far as they're trying to go, because there's a difference between trying and can. There's a
Right.
huge difference. Some people just don't try to be any better, and that's fine. If that works for them, that works for them. But if you individually are looking to be the best version of yourself, you got to start surrounding yourselves with people who are having the conversations you want to have, in the places that you want to be, have achieved the things that you want to achieve. Like, you have to go surround yourself with those people because they inspire and empower you at that point.
Right.
Just being in their presence a lot of times is enough to keep you motivated and keep you focused, and not deal with the distractions. Like Unique talked about that when she said she wanted to get married. When she recognized that it was time for her to get married, she stopped spending as much time with her single friends, because I can't learn how to be a wife from hanging
Right.
out with single people.
Doesn't
I
work.
can learn how to be a wife and how to operate inside of a marriage by hanging out with married people. A lot of times, by changing the people you surround yourself with, you change your thought process. You start seeing the world differently. You start experiencing the world differently, and you start to interact with the world differently. For me, I don't hang out with losers and bums. I only hang out with winners. And so, because I hang out with winners, guess what? I see God blessing me and pouring abundance all over my life. Like right now, I have it's like a giant plate of pancakes overflowing with syrup on there. Why? Because I surround myself with people who are doing the things that are in alignment with God's word. And because I surround myself with those individuals, God blesses me because I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing,
Right.
versus being over here and I'm doing the things that I want to be doing, but those things are not always aligned with doing the right thing. And that's where, for a lot of us, we have to set those clear boundaries. If you're not trying to go to the destination I'm trying to go to, if you're not trying to get from here to here, then hey, I can love you from a distance.
That's right.
Because Khalil alluded to this in a previous episode. If people are not an asset, they become a liability. And a person that's a liability can sometimes be a stumbling block, can sometimes be an impediment. Like me and my sister, we joke about this when we get on the phone with each other. How can I be of disservice to you today? How
Wow.
can I be a roadblock on your path to greatness? How can I how
Only
can I
siblings do
how can I
that.
trip you up on your journey to achievement? Like that's what a liability is. It gets to a point to where they start being a stumbling block, a speed bump, a barrier, a trip hazard, a fall hazard, a banana peel on your path to being the best version of yourself. And that's where we have to get real tight about protecting our boundaries, protecting our peace. For me, my cutoff game is real strong. There are family members I don't fool with. We will be in the same room and I do not speak to you. And the reason I do not speak to you is because there's a certain air of drama, chaos, calamity, catastrophe, and regular BSery that comes along with you. So in order to not have any of those things splash on me, I make sure that you're over here and I'm over here. I can't partake in those things and expect to not have those things splash off on me.
Right.
But what do you say to
And
those that um some people's like keep those type of people around because they feel like they owe them because
I,
they got me out of a situation, and I feel like I, I can't just cut them off even though yeah this person is negative or she's negative.
If those people were truly cared about you,
yeah.
they want you to be great. And they would recognize themselves. They should have the self-awareness to recognize that you can't be great as long as you're standing here with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we outside, on the corner, slinging rocks or doing whatever else we doing, you can't be great.
Right.
I gotta let you go because we know when you recognize, right, like when you're watching someone and you see that they're called to do a thing. Like being a kid watching Michael Jordan play basketball, I knew at 7 or 8 that God created him specifically to do this one thing. He didn't call him to play baseball. I know that's what he wanted to do, but that wasn't his ministry.
That wasn't his.
He was
That
getting
was
good though.
that
But he was
he
getting
was
good though before
getting
he came
good
back.
versus God called you to do a thing
Right.
is not the same thing. And that's where for a lot of us we get caught up in that. We get caught up in, trying to do things on our own power versus doing things on God's power. And
Mm-hmm.
so same thing LeBron James. Could you see LeBron James playing football?
Well, look, and he talked about
A
that
regular
because
player,
he played
maybe.
football. He played football, and he said, "Hey, eventually, he knew that basketball was where he needed to go, but he
It,
loved football. He still
exactly.
loves football.
We
He
we
loves
all
football.
we all have things that we love, but God does not call us to be those things. We were
Hmm.
not created to be those things. We are all a key that fits into a specific lock. Too often what happens is, and when you're around people enough, you recognize that this ain't the lock for them.
Right,
You recognize that this, if you love somebody, no different than when you're in a relationship with them, right? If I truly love you, I want you to be happy even if it ain't with me.
right.
And if I
There's growth. Yeah.
recognize that this right here, all of this loving right here, there's not enough loving for you to be the best version of yourself, then I got to let you go.
Right.
If I truly care about you, I want you to be happy. I want you to self-actualize. Like we talk about that in therapy, self-actualization. You fully manifesting the best version of yourself. If you can't be the best version of yourself here with me, guess what you're being? You're being the opposite. You're being the worst version of yourself.
Right. Like Marcellus, you talked about being in that fish tank, right? And they can't see what they need, right? And they need somebody who's from the outside looking in. When you tell people, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? When you tell people that they're missing something or they need something extra or that, hey, this thing is taking away from you, right? Some people can handle it and other people don't like constructive criticism because they take everything, because, right? We talked about defense mechanisms, right? The
Hmm.
defense mechanism comes in, right? So they can't take the constructive criticism because they're thinking, oh, this person is telling me that I'm not good enough or I've done this wrong, right? So not everybody is willing to receive. And that's the part that we call a barrier to your healing, right? Constructive criticism is a lot different than criticism. I remember RJ was talking about it in the episode, right? When people are giving you feedback, right? Constructive criticism is healthy feedback, right? And it's telling you, hey, you might need to do this, or you might need to change this, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
telling you, oh, you're a horrible person. You don't know what you're doing. You're stupid, right? They're trying to build you up. And if you don't have friends that are around you, right, that are willing to build you up or encourage you, right? Uh, Anytime you're having people who are around you doing negative things, right, and they want you to do those things with them, then they're not your good friend. I don't care what jams they got you out of or what situations they've helped you in. They aren't good people. They should be able to give you constructive criticism. You hear a lot of the NBA players, NFL players, right? They grew
Rappers.
up in some really low poverty areas. When you hear about some of them, there's a good 25% of them that grew up, with healthy moms and dads, but there's another percentage that's pretty high out there that they needed mentors. They needed people
Mm.
to guide them. They needed people to say, hey, you can't hang on this corner today. All
Mm-hmm.
right. I,
Right.
I want you to go to the basketball court, or I'm going to drive you to the basketball court so you don't hang with me. Right.
Yes.
Those are the people who need to be in your circle. You want more people like that are going to give you the constructive criticism. They're going to give you the feedback necessary. Now, I wanted to touch back to some healing, right? Because one of you guys were talking earlier, and I didn't want to interrupt, but when we were talking about some of the unhealthy family structures that we have, I'll never forget this. I was doing an interview with a client. I was a case manager at the time, doing an interview with the client, and she grew up in extreme poverty. She never had food, right? The food insecurity was real in her family, right? And so I'm asking her like, hey, you've been hoarding food, you've been, doing stuff. I'm working inpatient, right? I'm calling her out. I remember saying this, and just by seeing some of her actions, I'm like, what are you doing? You don't have to hoard food. We eat 3 times a day plus snacks. What are you hoarding for, right? And I remember talking to her, and she was like, no, I never had anything to eat growing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and she still had issues with that. And you even see it in other people where their children are overweight, right? Why are you keep feeding that child like that? Well, I didn't have any food when I was a child. I'm not going to let them starve because I starved as a kid, right? Or I never really had food as a kid. So when they want to eat, I'm going to give them some food, right? And you see this overcompensation. And these are unhealthy and maladaptive coping skills that they learned from being when they were younger, from being in situations where there was food insecurity, right? There needs to be healing there. I think we forget about that. That's a healing, especially in some of the African American cultures, right? And you see it in the cultures down south, white, black, Hispanic, all of them, right? You see it in the culture where it's like, I'm gonna overfeed a child. Well, there's some healing that needs to be done, right? Because most
Mm-hmm.
human beings should know that, right? Once you eat 3 meals, that's what your body should be suffice for the rest of the day, right? And if you're overcompensating from something that happened to you 30 years ago and you're overfeeding your child, you can kill your child. You get what
Absolutely.
I'm saying? They'll have diabetes at 6, 7, or 8, and this is stuff that I think people forget about when we talk about healing. Healing encompasses a wide variety, man. I'm talking about some holistic healing, some of the eating habits that we have, right? I had a friend just recently post that. If I'm full, why am I still eating? Well, I was told I better finish everything on my plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there needs to be healing there, and I think people forget healing encompasses so much more because that affects my mental health, right? When I'm overeating, right, and I'm not satiated, there's an issue. That's all a part of healing. And just because we want to talk about holistic, some of the things that people are afraid to talk about, but it's real. That's why we need mental health providers. That's why we need nutritionists. Why we need people, dietitians, because there's healing in all aspects of life that we need to touch upon.
I mean,
And
the
else.
the the main thing I think that, like what you were alluding to, I think that the main thing that people have to understand is that community matters.
Yeah,
You know, healing is not meant for you to do by yourself, and it can start with you, but you are more likely to do things when other people are around you. It's a scientific fact that
right.
you are more likely to engage in things, rather they be maladaptive or healthy, when you have other people doing things with you.
Yep.
When you look at lynch mobs and the where they gonna go string somebody up or they gonna tar and feather somebody, that groupthink is very powerful. So that's where having that supportive community around you, because there are support groups online, like, and that's the beauty of today's day and age, is the fact that you can find a support group
Yeah.
to enroll in, who can support you and be your cheer squad, to encourage you and pour into you and to inspire and empower you, to you are, to help you, reach your goals and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. I think that for a lot of us, we get caught up on trying to do everything by ourselves. um and and I tell people this all the time, like, you know we as human beings, we're herd animals. We need other human beings. When we go long periods of time with zero human interaction, our brain starts to attempt to compensate for the lack of human interaction. And you will start to see, especially for those individuals, like when you watch those shows like Locked Up, and where
Hmm.
you're seeing those individuals be in solitary confinement for extended periods of time, by like a week of being in there by themselves with limited human interaction, they start to see and hear things.
Right.
Their brain starts to compensate for the lack of community, the lack of interaction, the lack of mental, emotional, and physical stimulation that comes along with being a part of a herd, a part of a pack, a part of a pride, whatever group euphemism you want to use. Being a part of something bigger than yourself a lot of times is enough to inspire you to stay on track and not give up.
Right.
And I want to touch on a couple of things. I know Khalil, you mentioned about the client that was suffering from um poverty, and I guess she still had the same behaviors as she overcame poverty. I remember hearing a story about a Holocaust survivor, and he was eating out of the garbage cans,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
he had supportive family, and they had like Thanksgiving dinner, and he would leave the table and go in the garbage still. And somebody had to tell him like, "Hey, you don't have to do that anymore. The Holocaust is over. You have supportive family here. We have turkey on the table. We got bread, fresh bread. You don't have to go in the garbage and eat like somebody else's leftovers. Like somebody would throw away like a piece of bread or something. He would like go dig in the garbage instead of sitting at the dinner table. So yeah, like you said, that's really important to address the habits too, not just the trauma or whatever they went through at the time. The behaviors are
Yes.
still there. They don't just go away naturally. And back to RJ, when we're talking about um, negative people around you. I remember I was in college, early college years, and I was hanging out with this person, but he's kind of like very negative influence. But when I got into a situation, he was there and he had my back. He was ready to fight, and nobody else was there. But then my friend pulled me aside and said, "That doesn't really matter." I was like, "Why?" He's like, he backed me up when I needed him. Nobody else did. He goes, "But there's some people that they don't. Just because he backed you up doesn't mean he's your friend. Some people just like to fight, just like to get in those type of situations. That doesn't mean that he's your friend." So that opened up my eyes that wow, he wasn't really my friend. He just liked to be in those type of situations. Not like he's like, oh, I'm gonna put my life in the line for Marcellus. It was more of like
Mm-hmm.
I like to get in there. I like the drama, so I'm ready to fight. So no matter who was there, he's that type of person that would just get involved in that type of situation.
Right.
So yeah, that's. But I needed someone. I needed someone from the outside to open up my eyes because I was still closed minded. Like, oh man, this person, that's my boy. Even though he was negative, like I said, but I couldn't see it because all I saw was, yeah, this guy had my back. But somebody else had to step in and say, hey, here's a different perspective. He just likes to fight, and I saw it, and that opened up my eyes, and I eventually we were no longer like in contact.
Well, I
You were
mean,
willing to take the constructive criticism too.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
most of us, a lot of times, what we tend to do is we tend to romanticize
Right.
certain things.
Relationships. Yeah.
We romanticize relationships, so it comes across more, more heroic and cooler that,
yeah.
hey, this guy had my back, when all the while it was just he was just down with whatever. He
Hmm.
was into that type of stuff. Like, so you gave him, by hanging out with you, you gave him space and opportunity to be able to do the things he was into.
That's
And
right.
so a lot of times we sometimes we have to accept things for what they are. You know, as the honorable Maya Angelou says, when a person reveals themselves, believe them. So I'm a
Hmm.
firm believer in that. Like I'm a person that I watch everybody and I give everybody, grace and mercy. But once you reveal yourself to be who you are, I believe you. I truly believe you. And I don't need you to paint me the same picture more than once.
That's right.
I do not. But I definitely think that for us as individuals, we should all strive to envision ourselves as the best version of ourselves. Like
Mhm.
when it comes to healing, we have to think about where we want to see ourselves in the future. Who are you becoming on the other side of this? And by anchoring yourself in hope and not in your suffering, not in your wounds, not in your past hurts, not in your past disappointments, your past traumas, that's what's going to allow you to step into who you're supposed to be. You're never going to be able to, like Khalil, Khalil talks about this all the time about being mindful. Being mindful is being focused on the present. I ain't got no control over what happened in the past. Hell, I ain't got no control over what happens in the future. What I
Right.
have control over is what's going on right now. And so by envisioning where I want to be and I make the intentional and very purposeful steps right now in my present, I can make my future a reality. I can learn from the past, but no amount of boo-hooing, no amount of bemoaning, complaining, you know, not wanting to take accountability is going to change what happened over there. What I can do is learn from that, be better, be invested in being better, be intentional about being better, surround myself with better people who are going to show me what better looks like, because it's a difference for someone to tell you versus someone showing you.
Right.
Because people can tell you all day, I'm sorry. People can tell you, I love you. People can tell you that they're there for you. But it hits different when somebody shows you.
Right.
Actions plus words get results.
Hmm. Hmm.
And too often, like I was saying earlier, we romanticize. So when I hear that somebody, they love me, I'm all for it. But then when they're not showing me that they love me, now now I'm stuck at a juxtaposition. Now we're at a cognitive dissonance because you're saying one thing, but you're doing something completely different.
Right.
I don't believe anybody's words. I believe in their actions.
But that's tricky with the love thing because everybody has, a lot of people have their own definition of love. So that might
Hmm.
have been what they were taught. So they probably do love you, but don't know how to express it. And they learned it from the maladaptive behaviors. Like, for example, I've met some people that've been in relationships, and let's say their ex-boyfriend or was abusive, and then they met someone else and they said, "Oh, he's better than my ex
Yeah.
because he doesn't
Yep.
hit me, but he's verbally abusive. But at least the other person, at least he doesn't hit me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But so they accept that, but and say, "Oh, he loves me more than the other person did." But those are two, one less maladaptive behavior than the other. But they
So
don't see they
so
don't see it that way. They see it as love.
so people that say that, they get no slack from me. And the reason I don't is because we live in a TikTok and Instagram and social media age where everyone is a social media therapist. And so we one of these terms that gets thrown out on social media therapy sites all the time is love language.
Hmm. Hmm.
We
Hmm.
all experience and express and communicate as well as receive love differently. Anybody
Right.
who says any different is a complete idiot.
Hmm.
So we talk about these things. We throw those things out there. But my thing is, I challenge those individuals. Did you communicate your love language to the person that claims that they love you?
Right.
Because again, if you communicated to them, this is what my love language is, this is how I receive love, this is what communicates love to me, and then they're doing the exact opposite, beloved, that person don't love you.
Right.
They don't. I mean, they clearly don't, because you gave them the answers to the test and they bubbled C all the way down the scantron anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you think they're comfortable in the situations?
For some
Comfortable?
people, for some people, Khalil alluded to this in a previous episode. For some people, something is better than nothing.
Nothing.
And so
Right.
I'm afraid of being by myself. And so because I'm afraid of being by myself, like I worked with a young lady years ago when I worked at at Walmart. Um she was a very pretty girl. I mean, she's still a very pretty girl. But for her, she would jump out of a relationship and immediately be in another relationship. Like she'd break up with somebody on Friday, be dating somebody else by Wednesday.
Mhm. She had a full
Like
roster.
she
She kept
she
that
she
roster
she
open.
had that roster going.
Yes.
Because she was she
Why do
was
you think that?
well,
Why?
so because the thing about it though was like for her, she couldn't be by herself.
Right.
Okay.
She
Right.
couldn't be by herself. So her thought process was to get over somebody else. I got to get with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was afraid of being by herself because a lot of times with some of us, we don't like ourselves enough to be by ourselves.
What? Say it
So
again. Say
we
it.
do, I repeat, we don't like ourselves enough to be by ourselves.
Yes.
There are certain things that we do. There are certain ways that we think. There are certain ways that we move. There are certain ways that we talk that we ourselves, if we're being honest with ourselves, are piss poor. And
Mm-hmm.
because they're piss poor, I can drown it out and hide it when I'm always interacting with somebody else, or I'm up
Yeah.
under somebody else, or somebody up under me, or we booed up and we caked up. But the thing about
Escape.
it though is when you're by yourself, it's just you. It's you versus you at that point. So all your thoughts are there. All the things the insecurities are there. All the things that you're not hitting on, they're all there. And
Right.
so that's where for me, I challenge people all the time. Love yourself before you start to try to love somebody else.
Exactly.
And that's what healing is. It is loving yourself enough to where you're willing to put forth the effort to be better today than you were yesterday and be invested in being better tomorrow than you are today. But in today's society, we're so distracted by the phone, we're so distracted by social media,
Right.
reality television, gangster rap, illicit substances, OnlyFans, porn, whatever your distraction may be. We're so distracted by the world, by the things of the world, and the things of the flesh that we stay getting in trouble, and we don't even realize that we're working against our own best interest.
And
Right.
I think healing, the struggle for most people that don't want to change or have struggles is healing requires change of habits, and
Mm.
Absolutely.
they want to keep the same habits, but they want the results, but they
Well,
don't want to change the habits.
it's not just that, but for a lot of us, we're lazy.
Yeah.
A
Well, the
lot.
lifestyle adjustment, right? In order
Mhm.
to change your lifestyle, right, you got to do things drastically different. And if
Yeah.
you're lazy, you're not going to do it.
There's certain friends I got to give up. There's certain things I got to give up. I got to dress
Mm-hmm.
differently. I got to talk differently. I got to walk differently.
It's a lot.
It's a whole lot. So it's just easier in
Lifestyle
some
adjustment.
instances. Like I was watching a Country Wayne skit earlier, right? And I Man Shumpert is on there. So he's on there. He's dating one of the other female characters. So he likes to smoke, weed a lot. And so this female that he is dating, Shayla, she has a child with one of the other characters. So she takes her son to go to drop him off at her child's father's house, and the son smells like weed. So of
Mm.
course they argue about it. So she tells I mom that, hey, I need you to not smoke around my son so much. So he starts smoking outside. So he breaks up with her today because he says, hey, I don't want to have to change certain things about myself. Just
Mm-hmm.
like
There
I
you
don't
go.
want you to have to change things about yourself.
Yes.
And for a lot of us, it's easier for us to be the I Man Shumpert in these situations where it's easy for me to just hold on to these things because I'm not willing to let them things go.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I just ain't. I would rather throw you away and throw this whole relationship in the trash
Stay
than
the
throw
same.
this maladaptive behavior away.
Right.
100%.
Well, you think about it, right? Human beings, right? It is a very difficult thing for us to acknowledge, right? That, hey, we need healing, right? Because in order for us to be good for ourselves, our family, our children, right? We've got to heal first, right? And I'm going back to what we just discussed about not loving yourself, right? That process of healing is seriously about loving yourself, right? If I've been through some trauma, right? I've had some horrible relationships. I've been through some situations, right, where I was addicted, right? There were so many different things in my life, but I knew then that the same thing that we're talking about here, if I didn't get healing, right? If I wasn't right, there was no way I was going to be able to be any good to anybody else in a relationship, right? Because I didn't love myself. You don't do certain things when you love yourself, right? One of the things I brought up with a client, I said, when I was 21, I'll never forget it. I got a DUI. I had literally just turned 21. I think it was during Labor Day. I turned 21 like 3 months prior, right? I got this DUI, but I know for a fact I was intoxicated and I still got behind a wheel, right? And that wasn't the only time, right? I did the behavior excessively, right? If you love yourself, you're not going to risk your life. You get what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, right? Being in a relationship with somebody who you know it's unhealthy, right? You know it's toxic, right? You know that the relationship isn't making you feel good about yourself, right? But yet you're still clinging on to this person, you probably don't love yourself. You get what I'm saying? And so I started noticing stuff like that in my life, and I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you start to have some respect for yourself, you start carrying
Absolutely.
yourself with respect, you change, you make some lifestyle adjustments, right? That's that process of healing where I admitted I had a problem. I went,
Mm-hmm.
went and spoke to a counselor, start working with people, right? Being around people who were motivated individuals, like RJ said, people who are going to motivate you, right? Got some mentors, right? Started really changing some things, making some lifestyle adjustments. I started noticing, wow, the reason why people stay in these unhealthy relationships, stay in doing unhealthy, maladaptive things, right? Is because plenty of them don't love themselves enough to stop.
And sometimes the intimacy is really good, so it's hard for them to leave in those relationships, though.
Yeah.
And they,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I get it.
even
Yeah,
though
There.
they might see the negative, but that's like the one thing that's holding, keeping them there, and and,
yeah. That
and
that
Yeah.
it's hard.
feeling
It's
of
hard. It's
The
hard
closeness,
to
right?
walk away
you
from
know
that.
a lot of times it is the intimacy. Other times it's the familiarity. A lot of
Yes.
times
Yeah.
it's the convenience. A
Yeah.
lot of times it's the this is the only thing I've ever known, so it's a fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of the unknown, a fear of
Hmm.
change. Because
Yes.
we as human beings we're xenophobic, meaning
Yeah.
meaning that we're
Yeah.
afraid of anything different or change in
Different.
our environment.
Anything different.
And
Yeah.
so it's just it's very easy for us to say these things as therapists because again this is what we do every single day. But for the average individual who doesn't do this every day, it ultimately boils down and it starts with the thought and the want to do something different. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times just the start that's what sparks it. Spark typically starts a huge a roaring forest fire. And so if you are looking to change, it starts with the thought, starts with the belief that you can change, that you're capable of more than what you're presently doing, that you can do more, that you want to do more, and that you're
Right.
able to do more. And a lot of times enough, it just having the thought of you can do more, you can be more, you can achieve more. A lot of times the other things will kind of fall into place. You'll Other people will start to see the change in you, and
Right.
because they see the change in you they'll be invested in you. They pour into you because they're invested in you. And ultimately, like I said, it ultimately change, healing, growth, elevation all starts with each one of us every single day.
Right.
So we are going to end the conversation there. This is Try Not to Overthink It signing out. I'm RJ.
I'm Khalil.
If you like what you heard, like what you saw, we ask that you please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you do not miss out on any future content, any future conversations, or looking at these very, very attractive faces. If you would like to listen to us instead of watch us, I don't know why you would, because I'm very good looking. My parents did a very good job on making me, to some old school R&B.
Oh
So
goodness.
knocking the boots.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But if you would like to listen to us instead of watch us, we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Audible, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio files, we can be located. If you would like to support us even further, we have both an Instagram as well as a TikTok where we drop both condensed versions of the episode as well as different therapeutic topics that both Khalil and I talk about every single day called Mindfulness Minutes, all geared towards applying them to your everyday life in order to make your life, better 1 minute at a time. But this is Try Not to Overthink It signing out, and we will catch you guys next time. Peace.